Your life is on the line, and someone asks you exactly how much does it cost for the American dream? Is it 1 million, 1.5, $2 million, 2.5? Well, the exact number is $3,455,305. I'm sorry, that's a lot of money, but what is going into this? How can we reduce these costs? And exactly what is all going on in here? Let's go ahead and break it down. There was a really great article by Investopedia that breaks down exactly what the American dream is by most accounts and how much it actually costs. So I want to go through this article section by section and break down what goes into the cost and what are some ways that we can bring this down, because 3 million is not going to work. But here's the biggest issue. The average earnings for just a regular American is about 2.5 million lifetime. Okay, so the American dream is more than 3 million, but we're only going to earn 2 million or so in our lifetime. That's a gap. Okay, so what is going on here? How can we avoid this, reduce this? Let's just jump right into it. So I'm going to do a screen share and kind of pull out the things that really stood out to me. All right, so you can see the article here. I'll also make sure that we have it somewhere in the description below. And here are the takeaways. Again, here's a $3 million figure here. And these are the most common expenses. So that's the first thing, right? You don't have to own a home. Now, I have made plenty of arguments on how you can be more wealthy without owning a home. You can rent and be wealthy. Okay, I've done all the math. It's in Business Insider. It's several videos that we've talked about on this channel. So that's number one. Owning a house, having 2 kids. I've done 2 of those things and they are quite expensive. That is true. And then getting married, healthcare, cars, and education. Okay, so those are all the factors that go in here. And let's keep going. Raising 2 kids to 18 is now estimated at $576,000. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then the lifetime cost of owning a home with a 10% down payment, 30-year fixed mortgage at 7.2%. And that's going to be close to $800,000 according to their analysis. Now, the first thing that stood out here is if you got your mortgage in 2020 to 2021, you are likely going to keep that mortgage for life. Like mine is less than 3%. 7% is outrageous to me, right? So that's the first thing. Also, if you're looking to get a home, guess what? I got some good news for you, perhaps. Number one, Business Insider came out earlier this week and said that in 2024 and 2025, the Fed is looking, or expected rather, to reduce interest rates by 1% each year. Okay, so it's likely they're going to keep cutting throughout the year. It's not going to be one giant cut, but over the next 2 years, housing prices could come down, but definitely interest rates are expected to come down. So if you're in the market for a home, keep saving, keep a long-term view, and the housing market may come back to you. So that's one thing. But also, that's crazy. Okay, so that is very subjective, depending on when you got the interest rate and if you can reduce it to get it under that 7%. So that's something that stood out to me as well. All right, so they kind of give you a life cycle of how a lot of these events occur. Now, remember, everybody's life is different. You don't have to go through these steps. There is no flat out American dream for everybody, right? But these are just kind of milestone things that people tend to look for. We can argue whether or not these are good things to shoot for and whatnot. But first thing here is cost. And actually, let me see if I can zoom in here, make it a bit easier. And let's do this. All right, that way everybody can see it. So we've got $35,800 for cost of a wedding and engagement ring. Okay, that wasn't my experience. I was very lucky and very blessed, so that was not my experience, but it's quite expensive for a wedding. I'll tell you this, somebody been married. We just had our 8th year anniversary. Ooh, yeah, 8 years. That's crazy. So we just had our 8th anniversary. I'll tell you this, it's one day, and the most important thing on your wedding day, if you are planning to get married, and if you want to do that, is the food. That's what people are going to remember, and it's the pictures. And I will really, really emphasize the pictures. That's really the 2 things that matter, and more so the pictures, because years from now, your kids' kids, your grandkids, Ancestry.com, they're going to pull those wedding pictures. Okay, you want those to be as amazing as possible. All the flowers, all the other stuff, that's fluff. I'll be honest with you, it's fluff. Okay, nobody really cares or remembers how great the flowers were, and those things are quite expensive. Okay, so if you want to do that, focus on the food, perhaps an open bar, but definitely the pictures. Definitely the pictures, because those are the things that are going to last forever after that day. You're spending $40,000 for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Yeah, The economics just aren't there. Okay, this is my opinion on that one. Okay, average cost of a mortgage. The thing that stood out here again, yes, the interest rate is high for now. Contextually, for people who bought recently, people in the 80s are going to yell at me. I understand. I would also say that is just the mortgage. They were very specific on just the cost of the mortgage, not everything else around it. So repairs, maintenance, things like that. So it could be quite a bit more than that. I think in most cases, they say between 1 to 1.5% of the home's value is what you're going to spend in maintenance each year. That has been my experience in my 2 years of home ownership. So there's that. Next one is car purchases. Now, we can go through as we go throughout the article and show you, but they are saying that you buy a new car every 6 years or so. I think this is the place where you can really cut down on those costs. Now, again, this is not for everybody, but I've always bought my cars in cash since I was 16. Okay, now the downside to that, especially when you're 16, it ain't always the nicest car. Okay, but I have the argument that if you do buy a car and buy well, so for me, I stick to just a certain brand, typically that is easy to repair and that has a history of longevity. So you buy your Toyota, it's gonna be hard to kill that Toyota. Okay, if I get me a used Toyota that's, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old, it's going to last another 7, 8, 9 years. It's going to be very inexpensive to fix in most cases if you do your research and everything in between. The best advice I can give you on buying a used car, other than the fact of try and buy cash as much as you can, is the pre-purchase inspection. Now, I did an entire video on this and how it saved me several $1,000s. But what that is you go to the dealership, you take the car and you take it to somewhere else for them to run an inspection on everything to see what is wrong with the car and if there are any major repairs needed. The benefit of doing that is that little $300 that you pay for the pre-purchase inspection can prevent major issues that you didn't know about or that the person who sold you the car did not tell you about. Okay, I did this myself. We went through 2 cars to the pre-purchase inspection. One was great, one was not. There was like a transmission issue that would have cost me $5,000. Okay, so they didn't tell me that. They said the car was fine. Took it to the pre-purchase inspection. They said, no, it's not all great. So we had to take that car, may add some choice words, right? And then move on. But it was absolutely worth it. So that's something you should check out if you're looking at the car. Maintenance for that is going to add up for any car. But for me, they calculate, what percent is going to be for a car loan and all kind of stuff. Just hasn't been my experience. That is one area where I would definitely try and to reduce that as small as I possibly can. Also, with people working from home more, maybe that'll change things. Curious there. All right. Lifetime cost of pet care. I ain't got no pets. Don't plan on getting no pets. Not a pet guy, not an animal person. So there's that. So you can eliminate nearly $70,000 off of that number by not owning a pet. But again, this is just me, right? My opinion. Everybody has their own thing. Next one is a difficult one. And this is one reason why health insurance is important. I can get into a whole government debate. I'm not. But lifetime cost for family health insurance premiums, $934,000 is ridiculous. But that does take up a big chunk of your budget. I don't think enough people really consider that number. But that's one that is unfortunately pretty much unavoidable, but one that you absolutely need. So that one's just there. Cost of raising a kid to 18, and this is 2 kids. $576,000. Now, people have different views on having kids and that whole thing. I'm definitely not getting into that, but that's the cost. And I would argue, I'm always curious on how they come up with these numbers because yes, I'm thinking about what I'm saving in my 529 plan for my kids, what I'm investing for my kids. I'm also thinking about daycare, clothes, food, but also what people don't think about when you have kids and you are looking at the expenses is this. There are things that you do that you don't always realize, or things that you do. For example, would I have gotten a larger SUV, which is going to cost me more gas if I didn't have 2 car seats in the back? Right? Things like that. Would I have to buy more plates and more silverware because my kids keep throwing away forks? Things like that. That you don't always think about that do cost you. So I'm curious as to how they exactly came up with that number. But over time, I divided it out by 18 years, divided by 2. Yeah, for each kid, I could definitely see that number. Okay, and I didn't go in order because it kind of snakes around, but $5,708 median pocket for insurance for babies at the hospital. Yeah, I did a very, very old video that might be on YouTube. It's definitely on our Facebook page where we talk about the actual bill it was to have my son back in 2018. So that sounds about right. And that's just, again, that's the median. But we had him in New York, so it's probably on the higher end. All right. Average cost of college for state tuition, including room and board for 2 kids. Now, this is another one that is optional. And how you look at the word optional is definitely up to you. So there are some parents that feel that you absolutely have to pay or try to pay for all 4 years. I'm going to tell you how to do that. I would prioritize yourself as get your retirement, your savings, all your stuff together, because that's going to help the kids in the long run. Also, that's just 1 year. So sometimes some parents meet them halfway. Hey, we're going to do half, you do half. Or you can start investing now, doing what you can to make sure they are academically ready for a scholarship, athletic scholarship, chess scholarship, whatever niche that you can. So that's another way. And then there are ways that you can circumvent the entire college system as a whole. Coding camps and a bunch of other opportunities are out there as well. We can debate the value of college and whether or not it's going to be worth it in the next 20 or 30 years. I would love to have that debate. You guys want me to have that? Feel free to put that in the comment section. But that is something that is out there. I think that's flexible. I wouldn't say completely optional, but definitely flexible there. The average amount needed to retire. Now, this feels low. That feels low at $715,000. Now, the reason why it may is because you're also adding in that lifetime of health insurance. So maybe I can add those two together and it may feel better, but just an interesting figure there. And the average cost of a funeral, which is sad, about $7,800, which from my estimates and everything that I've looked at definitely seems appropriate. So let's scroll down and just give you a little more context into some of these numbers, because again, I thought these were pretty interesting. Now, when you add all that stuff up, that's how you get the $3.4 million. But again, right here, the average lifetime earning for Americans is approximately $2.3 million. That is the key issue. And I think right here is where you run into, especially for millennials, and perhaps Gen Z will feel this at some point in time, but where a lot of millennials and perhaps younger Gen X, older Gen X, I don't know how the generations work, but especially for millennials, I can speak for us, where we feel kind of jaded by the economy, in that what we saw our parents have is not what we have. And that is primarily because the cost of all that stuff that we showed earlier versus what we're making now, the generations are not the same, right? And this is not a small gap. It's $1 million gap. $1 million gap between what the average American makes and 2.3 million, and then 3.4 in terms of what everything costs. Now, again, you can adjust some of those costs. Not having kids, or not having 2 kids, right? Or not having pets and things of that nature. So you can flex this a little bit, but you can see why as an entire generation people feel very, very jaded, or why people even say that there is a silent recession, right? Because we don't get to see the exact same things that we may have seen growing up. Because my parents had, they had 3 kids eventually, but at first it was 2 of us growing up in the 90s. They had a house, they had cars, they had all this stuff, and everybody was fine in the 90s. At least it felt like it, right? You can't do that nowadays, right? It definitely feels much, much different because of how expensive college has gotten, how expensive childcare has gotten, and everything in between. So before we close out, here's some of the things that they pulled out and where they got these numbers. Again, I'll put this in the comment section just so you can see, or in the description below, so you can feel free to read the entire thing here. But what is the solution here, right? So some of these things, again, they're flexible, right? So when it comes to the retirement piece, the earlier you start investing, I say to try and get as close as you can to 15%. Putting that in your 401k, your 403b, whatever retirement plan you have, that's something that's going to help you to be flexible and get to this number a lot faster if that's what you choose. I think the most important thing here is this. The American dream, right? I'll scroll up here real quick. The American dream that is laid out before you doesn't have to be what society tells you it has to be. You don't have to own a home. You don't have to be married. You don't have to have kids, right? You can do this in whatever order you feel like doing it, and whatever suits you and your budget, but most importantly, what makes you happy. And I think that is the main thing. And I think sometimes we get caught up on, by this age, I am supposed to have this, or sometimes your family, or there may be societal pressures, or everybody else on your timeline may feel like, hey, everybody went to grad school, I have to go now. And that's going to put you $80,000 in the hole, right? Everybody else is buying a house, now I feel like I have to buy a house. you don't have to do it in that way. Do what fits best for you. Do what's going to make you more comfortable. Do what your budget allows. And this isn't like it's not a blueprint. It's just a template that some people use, right? You can build your own happiness, your own American dream based on any amount of blocks that you want to arrange. The main thing is, at whatever level, at whatever choices you decide to make on that journey, that you take care of your finances in a way that you can enjoy whatever route you do take. I think that is the main thing here. So investing at 15% is going to allow you to do that. Making sure that you're understanding how much is coming in and going out is another big part of that. Knowing what to invest in, which we talk so much about on this channel, is going to be the best way to understand that and go throughout this journey. So those are my takes on it. If you want to learn more about investing, and especially on like what to choose, how to open an account, and all that type of stuff, then these are the videos that you need to check out